He left me there. Just left. My son, Michael, dropped me off at the airport, promised he'd park and come in to help me with check-in. My knees were aching, my hands shook from the cold, but I waited by the baggage claim like he said. An hour passed. Then 2. My phone died. I asked a stranger if I could borrow theirs, and that's when I saw the text, "Got stuff to do, Dad. You'll manage. You always do." I stared at it for a long time. That was the moment I realized, I was no longer his priority. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when Michael looked at me like I hung the moon. After Marjorie passed, everything I did was for that boy. He was only 6, and he didn't understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. I remember sitting on the edge of his bed, brushing his hair back, whispering, "It's just you and me now, kiddo. We're gonna be okay." I didn't believe it myself, but I said it anyway, because he needed to. I took the night shift at the mill so I could be there to walk him to school every morning. I packed his lunches, tried to learn how to braid the crust of an apple pie like Marjorie used to, never quite nailed it, but he ate every slice. On weekends, we built birdhouses, went fishing, or just sat on the porch watching storms roll in. We didn't talk much, but we didn't have to. He'd just lean into my shoulder, and I'd rest my chin on his hair. That was enough. Michael was a bright kid. Polite, thoughtful. He always said, "Thank you," even when I gave him plain bologna sandwiches for the 3rd day in a row because we couldn't afford ham. He never made me feel small for what we didn't have. He used to leave little notes around the house, stick figures of us holding hands, or "I love you Daddy," scrawled in red crayon on napkins. I still have a shoebox full of them in the back of my closet. Can't bring myself to throw them away. There was a time he'd call out for me when he had nightmares. His tiny voice would crack through the hallway like a whisper from God, and I'd be at his side before the second syllable. "I'm here, buddy. I've got you." I'd tuck him in, hum one of Marjorie's old lullabies, and stay until he fell asleep. As he got older, he started asking more questions. Why don't we have a new car like the other kids? Why don't we go on vacations? I'd tell him the truth, because we're saving for college. Because we're building something better. And he'd nod, understanding more than any kid should. He worked hard in school, made the honor roll, even got a part-time job at the library when he was 16. When he graduated high school, he hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. "You did it, Dad," he said. "We did it." I cried that night. Not out of sadness, but because I believed, deep in my bones, that all the pain, all the long hours, all the lonely nights without Marjorie had been worth it. I remember helping him move into his dorm. He didn't want much help, but I insisted. Carried box after box up 3 flights of stairs while he joked about me pulling something. Before I left, I handed him a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, his mother's favorite, and said, "Never forget who you are." He nodded, eyes glassy, and pulled me in for a hug. "I won't, Dad. I promise." And for a while, he didn't. He came home every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. He called on Sundays just to check in, to ask how my tomatoes were doing or if I was still walking to the diner every morning for coffee. We laughed about old cartoons, teased each other about our favorite football teams. When he got his first job out of college, he called me before anyone else. "I got it, Dad. I got the job. You earned it, son. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you." I held on to those words like they were gospel. When he met Lacey, I was happy for him. She was polite, smiled a lot, though she had a way of looking at my hands like they were too rough, too old. Still, I welcomed her. Told him she seemed lovely. I even gave them the keys to Marjorie's car, said they'd need something safe to start their life in. When they had their first child, I cried harder than I had in years. A granddaughter. Little Molly. I knitted her a blanket in Marjorie's favorite colors, soft blue and sunflower yellow. I remember holding that baby in my arms, whispering to her that her grandma would have loved her so much. I felt like life had come full circle. Like I'd done something right. Back then, I would have given my last dollar to Michael. Would have laid down my life without hesitation. He was my legacy, my heart outside my chest. I thought I was raising a good man. I really did. But years have a way of revealing the cracks. And sometimes the things you built with love crumble not from outside forces, but from within, when love stops being enough. The changes were so small at first, I almost didn't notice them. That's how these things go, isn't it? It's never a sudden slap, it's more like a slow leak. One quiet drip after another until the floor gives out beneath you. It started with the phone calls. Used to be, Michael would call every Sunday like clockwork. We'd talk about everything and nothing, his work, the kids, how my arthritis was doing. But then those calls got shorter. Then more spaced out. Busy week, Dad. I'll call next time. Next time turned into next month. When he did call, Lacey's voice would always pop up in the background. Tell him we have to go, or wrap it up, Mike. I'd hear her and pretend not to. I didn't want to be the old man clinging too tight. I'd laugh it off, tell him, go on, son, sounds like you've got your hands full. But something in his voice always felt distracted. Like I was just one more chore to check off. Then there were the visits. They used to come every other month. The house would come alive when they did, Molly running through the hallway, Lacey scrolling through her phone on the porch, Michael helping me fix the gutters or trim the hedges. But those visits dried up too. At first, they said the kids had sports. Then it was school. Then it was traffic, gas prices, you wouldn't enjoy the drive, Dad. It's a hassle. One day, I suggested they come up for Easter. I'd roast a ham, even dig out Marjorie's old serving dishes. Michael sighed into the phone. Dad, we've talked about this. Your place is just, it's kind of outdated. It's not really a great spot for the kids anymore. That hit me harder than I let on. Outdated. My home. The same home where he took his first steps, where he read his first book, where he cried into my chest the day Marjorie died. That house was built from sweat and memories. But now it was too outdated for his shiny new life. I let it go. Told myself I was being sensitive. Still, I started noticing more. Little things. Like how Michael would avoid looking me in the eye during video calls. Or how he'd speak to me in this clipped, professional tone, like I was one of his clients and not the man who once held his feverish head through the night. And Lacey, she never called me Dad. Always, your father, like I was some burden she had to acknowledge from a distance. During Christmas 2 years ago, she got me a book on minimalist downsizing for seniors. No note, no warmth. Just a message wrapped in a bow, you're taking up too much space. Then came the money. I never asked for a cent. Never would. But they started treating my generosity like an expectation. Michael would mention how expensive daycare was, how tough mortgage rates were, always with this casual tone, like I should offer to help. And I did. Paid for Molly's school supplies, sent gift cards, even covered a broken water heater when their savings ran dry. One day, I sent them a check for $500 for emergencies. He never even thanked me. I told myself they were busy. That they meant well. That this was just what adulthood did to relationships, it stretched them thin, but the love was still there underneath. But the truth was harder. It came during a family barbecue they hosted. I hadn't been invited in a while, but this time they said I could come, if it's not too far for you, Dad. I showed up early, as I always did. I brought my old potato salad recipe, the one Marjorie used to make. When I got there, I saw Michael and Lacey huddled with some of their friends on the deck. They didn't notice me right away. I heard one of the women laugh and say, "So your father still lives in that old shack?" Lacey giggled. "You mean the retirement museum?" "Oh yeah, he refuses to leave it. Thinks it's sacred ground or something." Michael chuckled too. "We've tried. He's stubborn. But we're working on it." They were working on it. Like I was a problem to be solved. I stood there frozen, potato salad in hand, ears burning. My legs didn't want to move, but I made myself walk up the steps and pretend I hadn't heard a thing. Michael turned, gave me a quick, "Hey, Dad. You made it." No hug. No warmth. That day, I realized something deep down had shifted. I wasn't a father to them anymore, not really. I was an obligation. A nuisance. A dusty relic from a part of Michael's life he was trying to forget. And the worst part? I still wanted to believe it was just stress, or a phase, or some kind of misunderstanding. Because if I admitted the truth, that my own son was slipping away from me by choice, I didn't know if I could bear it. So I smiled through gritted teeth. I passed out the potato salad. I laughed at stories I wasn't included in. And when I went home that night, I sat in Marjorie's old armchair and stared at the dark, empty living room until the sun came up. Something had changed. And I didn't know how to stop it. It was Molly's school play that did it. She was playing the lead in The Wizard of Oz. Michael had sent me the details weeks before, told me I could come if I felt up to it. I cleared my calendar, polished my shoes, even bought a new coat, navy blue, just warm enough for the chill. I wanted to look presentable. Like a grandfather should. I got there early, of course. I always do. Found a seat near the front with a good view of the stage. I even brought my old camera, the one Marjorie used for every birthday and graduation. I wanted to record it, show Molly one day how proud I was. The auditorium filled slowly, parents, siblings, cousins, grandparents. I saw Michael and Lacey come in just before the lights dimmed. They sat 5 rows behind me. I turned around, smiled, raised a hand in a small wave. Michael met my eyes, and then looked away. No wave. No nod. Just turned to Lacey and said something I couldn't hear. She laughed. They stayed seated while I watched Molly shine like a star under the stage lights. I filmed every second, heart full and breaking all at once. After the show, the kids gathered near the stage. Parents swarmed, taking pictures, hugging, handing out flowers. I approached slowly, waiting for Michael and Lacey to finish with her. When they turned to leave, I stepped forward. "Molly," I said, holding out a small bouquet of daisies, Marjorie's favorite. She looked up at me, eyes lighting for a second. "Grandpa." But before she could take the flowers, Lacey placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Let's go, sweetie. You've got pictures with the class." Michael didn't even look at me. Just ushered them past. I stood there holding those flowers like a fool. I watched them walk away, Lacey's hand on Molly's back, Michael's face unreadable. The daisies drooped in my hand. Later that evening, I called him. "Why did you walk past me like that?" I asked, my voice soft but shaking. "What do you mean?" he said, tone dry. "You saw the chaos. It was just busy. You could have said hello. Molly wanted to talk to me." He sighed. "Dad, I'm trying to protect her from confusion. You're unpredictable lately. You show up, say things that make people uncomfortable. It's just easier to keep some distance." "Unpredictable?" "You made a scene at the last barbecue, hovering around, acting like you belonged in every conversation." I paused, stunned. "That's what I was doing? Hovering?" He didn't answer. "I'm your father," I finally said. "And I'm trying to be a father now too," he snapped. "Maybe it's time you understood that." Then he hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand for what felt like hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat still, like if I moved too quickly, I might fall apart. The next week, I was invited, no, summoned, to a family dinner. Michael said he wanted to clear the air. I dressed carefully. Put on Marjorie's favorite tie. I even brought a bottle of wine I'd been saving since Molly was born. Thought maybe this was our chance to heal things. But from the moment I walked in, I could feel it. Cold smiles. Tight greetings. A stiff table setting with no seat saved for me at the head, where I always used to sit. Instead, I was tucked between the kids, barely room to move my elbows. The meal was quiet. Lacey talked about Pilates. Michael talked about stocks. Nobody asked how I was. Nobody mentioned the play. Then, during dessert, Lacey cleared her throat. "We've been thinking," she said, too casually. "About your place." I looked up. "It's a lot for one person," she continued. "And Molly's growing up so fast. Wouldn't it be nice to have her closer to family history?" Michael jumped in. "What Lacey means is, maybe we could start the process of transferring the house. Just to have things prepared. You know, for when the time comes." I blinked. "What time?" They exchanged a look. "When you can't handle things alone anymore," Lacey said, not unkindly, but not kindly either. "You're not getting any younger, Dad," Michael added. "We just want to be proactive." I stared at them. At their calm faces. Their neutral tones. Their quiet, calculated betrayal. "That house was your mother's dream," I said. "She painted every wall, planted every flower. We built it together, brick by brick. And we want to preserve that," Michael replied. "But there are tax advantages if we—" I stood up. They stopped speaking. "I see," I said. "You don't want me to have a home. You want me to become a liability you can manage." "That's not fair," Lacey muttered. "Isn't it?" I said. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "I buried my wife on that land. Raised a son. Paid every bill. And now you want to take it before I'm even cold." Michael's jaw clenched. "No one's talking about that." I looked at him, really looked. And in that moment, I didn't see the boy I raised. I saw a man who had already written me off. Who looked at me and saw an inconvenience in human form. "I'll let myself out," I said. I left the wine on the counter, untouched. And as I walked to my car, I realized something gutting and permanent. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were counting on it. A week after that dinner, I started cleaning out the old filing cabinet in the den. It wasn't for any particular reason, just one of those urges you get when you feel something slipping through your fingers. I wanted to feel grounded, in control of something. That's when I found the letter. It was wedged between old tax documents and a folder of Marjorie's recipes. A legal-looking envelope with my name typed cleanly on the front. But I hadn't opened it. Didn't recognize the sender. It was dated 2 months ago. Inside, I found a pre-filled power of attorney form. My name already printed. Lines ready for my signature. A note attached in Michael's handwriting. "Dad, just sign this when you get a chance. It's for emergencies only. Makes things smoother in case anything happens. Love, M." I read that line over and over, "makes things smoother." Something about it made my stomach turn. I hadn't signed it, thank God. But that meant they'd been planning this behind my back for months. Before the school play, before the dinner, maybe even before the last Christmas when they left early, citing early meetings. I sat in that den for a long time, holding the paper. I could hear the ticking of the clock above Marjorie's portrait. Her smile, frozen in time, felt more like a warning than a comfort now. Later that day, I walked down to the corner store. Joe, the owner, had known me for decades. As I bought my usual loaf of rye and a newspaper, he asked, "Your son was in here last week, asking about you." "Oh yeah?" Joe looked hesitant. "Yeah. He was asking about the property. Asked if I knew the last time you updated your will." I must have gone pale because Joe quickly added, "I told him I didn't know. Just thought you should, be aware." I nodded, thanked him, and walked out with £1,000 stone in my chest. They weren't waiting for me to need help. They were building a case to take over. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, listening to the wind creak the old house beams. I thought about Marjorie. About her voice. The last real thing she ever said to me, back in the hospital, when the cancer had taken almost everything but her mind. "Promise me you'll protect this place," she whispered. "Not just the house, our life in it." I'd nodded. Told her I would. I meant it. So why was I letting our son turn it into a bargaining chip? I went to the bedroom and opened the box at the foot of the bed. It held everything sacred: Marjorie's wedding ring, her old Polaroid camera, the lock of Molly's baby hair she'd kept, and the last version of my will. I read it from start to finish. Michael was listed as sole inheritor. Molly was named only as a secondary beneficiary should something happen to him. Back then, it made sense. He was my only child. My blood. My responsibility. But now? Now I wasn't sure who he was anymore. The next day, I began paying closer attention. I stopped telling Michael when I had doctor's appointments. Just to see if he'd ask. He didn't. I stopped reminding him of bills I used to help with. They never got paid. He only called once, to ask if I'd looked over the power of attorney form yet. "Just a formality, Dad," he said, his tone clipped. "It protects you too." "Protects me from what?" I asked. He paused. "From bad decisions. From people taking advantage of you." I almost laughed. "And who's taking advantage of me, son?" Another pause. "Then, let's not make this complicated." Too late for that. After that call, I started a little notebook. I documented every conversation, every instance of subtle pressure. I wrote down dates, times, even how Lacey looked at me the last time she visited, like I was already fading from the picture. I also started going to the diner more often. Not just for the eggs and black coffee, but for the people. Folks like Marv and Cynthia, old-timers who knew the value of a quiet, watchful eye. One afternoon, Cynthia leaned in and said, "Heard from Barbara that your boy's been talking to that realtor fellow on Main Street." My heart sank. "What for?" She shrugged. "Didn't say. But he mentioned your address. The same address where I'd built my life. The same place where Marjorie used to bake blueberry muffins on Sundays and hang laundry on the line while singing Patsy Cline. And they were shopping it around like it was an investment property." That night, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I saw my father's eyes. My grandfather's jaw. Generations of men who worked until their bones ached just to leave something behind. A home. A name. A bit of dignity. And now my own son was chiseling away at all of it. Quietly. Strategically. Like I was an old tree whose shade he no longer needed. But I wasn't hollow. Not yet. So I put the power of attorney form in a new envelope. I wrote across the front in bold red marker, "Return to sender." I mailed it the next morning. And that afternoon, I made an appointment with a lawyer. If they wanted to play a game of paperwork and signatures, they were going to find out I still knew how to write my own story. Speech balloon. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? Let us know in the comments. I didn't go in angry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pound my fist on the table or call him names. That's not my way. My father used to say, when a man wants to be heard, he lowers his voice. So I waited. I waited until the timing was right, until my hands had stopped trembling, until I could look my son in the eyes and say what needed to be said. I asked Michael to meet me for coffee, neutral ground. The little diner on Willow Street. The same one I used to bring him to after Little League games. Back then, he'd get pancakes with chocolate chips and I'd sneak him a second hot chocolate when Marjorie wasn't looking. This time, he didn't order anything. He sat down across from me in his crisp jacket and looked at his watch like he had somewhere better to be. You said this was important, he asked. It is. I slid the envelope across the table. The same one I'd mailed but had somehow ended up unopened in my mailbox a week later. He looked at it but didn't touch it. I'm not signing it, Michael. He smirked. It's just a precaution. No, I said, my voice steady. It's control. And I won't hand that over, not to you, not to anyone. He leaned back, exhaling hard through his nose like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. You forget things. You talk to yourself in public. You sit alone for hours at the park. Lacey and I are just trying to. You're trying to remove me from my own life, I cut in. And you've been doing it behind my back. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. I know about the realtor. About the visit to Joe's shop. About the will you're so eager to inherit. His face flushed. Who's been talking to you? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. People who still remember who I am. Who haven't decided I'm past my expiration date. Michael sat in silence for a moment. Then, quietly, almost like he was challenging me, you don't know everything, Dad. I studied him. For the first time in my life, I saw a man I didn't recognize. A man who once clung to my leg as a boy now stared at me with calculation in his eyes. I know enough, I said. That was the moment he slipped. He leaned forward, voice low. You're sitting on a piece of land worth almost $600,000. Do you even know that? You could be in a nice assisted living place. Have a nurse. Real meals. Comfort. I have comfort, I said. I have peace. What I don't have is trust in you anymore. His jaw clenched. We're not trying to hurt you. No, you're trying to erase me. That's worse. He stood then, abrupt and sharp. I'm done arguing about this. He walked out without paying for his coffee. Not that he'd ordered anything. Still, the gesture stung. The waitress came by, her eyes soft. She'd been pretending not to listen, but I knew better. You okay, Mr. Hughes? She asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't. I will be. After he left, something shifted inside me. The grief had been sitting like a stone in my chest for months, but now it was turning into something else. Something heavier but sharper. Not rage, no. I'm too old for that. But resolve. I got up and paid the bill. Left a tip big enough to make her smile. Then I walked to the library. Not many people know this, but the library has more than just books. It has resources. A young woman named Kayla helped me find contact numbers, notaries, online forms. She even walked me through some estate planning basics. Trying to get your affairs in order, she asked gently. Trying to protect what's mine, I said. She didn't ask more. A few days later, I visited Mr. Emerson, a retired lawyer who used to bowl with me on Tuesdays. I laid everything out, my will, the power of attorney document, the house deed. I want a new will, I told him. I want Michael removed entirely. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Just nodded and got to work. We added a clause: if anyone contests the will, every asset would go to charity. Not a penny would touch their hands. We also drafted a formal statement revoking any verbal agreements, and reaffirmed my ownership of the property. I had it all notarized. It wasn't about being cruel, it was about protecting my dignity. My history. Marjorie's memory. Before I left his office, I asked him one more thing. If something happens to me, I said, make sure Molly gets a letter I've written. Not a check. Just my words. He nodded. On the way home, I stopped at the park. Watched the ducks in the pond. Thought about how many times Marjorie and I brought Michael here when he was little. How he used to giggle when we threw breadcrumbs and the birds swarmed. Now, I wondered if he remembered those days at all. Or if they were just noise in the background of the life he was trying to curate, one where I didn't exist anymore. But I did. I do. And I wasn't going anywhere quietly. The office smelled like old leather and lemon polish. A quiet, slow sort of place, nothing rushed, nothing loud. Just the steady hum of a ceiling fan and the scratch of pen on paper. I sat across from Mr. Emerson, my hands resting on a folder of documents, property deed, bank statements, and a photo of Marjorie, folded gently into my will like a pressed flower. I'm ready, I said. He looked at me over his glasses, then nodded once. Let's begin. We started with the basics. Full name, date of birth, identification. Then came the hard part, crossing out Michael's name. It felt wrong. Like erasing a limb. I never thought I'd have to do this, I said quietly. No one does, Mr. Emerson replied, not unkindly. But doing what's right for your peace of mind, that's still your right. I nodded. We restructured everything. The house would go to a local veterans shelter, Marjorie's house, I decided to call it. She always cared deeply for servicemen. Her father served in Korea, and she used to knit blankets for the VA hospital every winter. My savings, what little remained, would be divided between the shelter, the local library, and a fund for foster youth scholarships. I made sure to write it in plain terms: no inheritance shall be given to Michael Hughes or his spouse, Lacey Hughes, under any circumstance. Then we added the clause that would seal it all. If the will is contested by any named party or family member, all assets, real and financial, will be donated in full to the state foster system and the Veteran Support Fund, with no exceptions. Mr. Emerson looked up. That's ironclad. You sure? I thought of the school play. Of the dinner where they spoke of my house like it was already theirs. Of the power of attorney form. Of the way Michael didn't even flinch when I said I wasn't signing it. Yes, I said. I'm sure. We signed everything. He had it notarized, stamped, filed. When it was done, I felt something strange. Not relief. Not sadness. Something quieter. Control. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't just drifting. I wasn't just waiting for the next betrayal. I had drawn a line. After I left the office, I sat in my truck with the windows down and stared at the envelope on the passenger seat. My copy of the will. My life on paper. I reached over and patted it gently, like you might a sleeping child. Marjorie, I whispered, I kept my promise. On the drive home, I stopped by the cemetery. Her grave was simple, just the way she wanted it. I cleaned off the stone with the handkerchief I always carried. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the rows of markers. I know this isn't what we imagined, I said. We thought we'd pass the house down to our children. Thought we'd be the beginning of something strong. But baby, they've changed. Or maybe we never saw the truth. A breeze blew gently through the grass, and for a moment, I felt like she was there beside me. Not angry. Not sad. Just, understanding. I stayed until the air turned cold. When I got home, I placed the envelope in the safe beneath my bed. Then I took out a notebook and started writing a letter to Molly. Not for now, for later. When she's old enough to understand. I told her stories. About her grandma's laugh, the way she danced while stirring soup. About her father's first time riding a bike, how he cried when he thought he broke my nose playing catch. I told her about the treehouse we built, the tomato garden Marjorie loved, the time Michael caught a firefly in a mason jar and thought it was magic. I didn't write anything bitter. I didn't blame. I just told her the truth. That family is supposed to be made of more than blood, it's made of respect, care, and memory. And when those things fade, it's okay to protect yourself, even from people you love. I closed the notebook and tucked it beside the will. Then I made myself a cup of tea, sat on the back porch, and listened to the wind rustle through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard a child's laughter, faint, drifting through time. It reminded me that there was still something left to give in this life. But it would go to those who earned it. Not those who felt entitled to it. It was my birthday. 81 years. You'd think by then, you'd stop expecting things from people. You'd think you'd learn to protect your heart from the sting of disappointment. But hope is a stubborn thing. It doesn't die quietly, even after all it's been through. I hadn't heard from Michael all week, but I figured he was planning something. A call, at least. Maybe he'd bring Molly by with a slice of cake like we used to do. I even cleaned up the living room, dusted the picture frames, laid out the cookies I'd baked early in the morning, just in case. I put on the blue sweater Marjorie bought me back when I turned 60. Still fit, more or less. I waited. By noon, nothing. By 3, still nothing. I called Michael. No answer. Sent a message. No response. By 6, I stopped pretending. It was almost dark when I got curious, or maybe just foolish. I opened my computer, went to Molly's school's social media page. There it was. A photo, posted just hours earlier, Michael and Lacey smiling wide at a birthday dinner, for Lacey's father. They were at a steakhouse across town. All dressed up. Lacey's dad holding a slice of cake while Molly sat in his lap. I stared at the screen so long the image blurred. He wasn't just forgetting me. He was replacing me. And the worst part? He didn't even think he had to hide it. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't shout or throw anything. I just sat on the porch with a blanket over my knees and listened to the quiet. When you've been betrayed slowly over time, there's no single blow. It's like a leak in a ceiling that eventually caves in. You hear the dripping for years, but still flinch when the whole thing collapses. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I want the documents ready, I said. All of them. Everything we discussed. They're already prepared, he told me. Good, I said. Because I'm ready too. I spent the next 2 days gathering everything. Photocopies of the will, the notarized letter revoking any former verbal agreements, photos, documents. I even printed out a screenshot of the social media post, not out of pettiness, but proof. Proof of what was said without words. Then I pulled the old cedar box from the hall closet, the one Marjorie had carved our initials into the lid. Inside were letters, journals, her recipes, and one last sealed envelope. It had been there since the day she passed. She gave it to me in the hospital and said, "Don't open it until you feel like giving up." I never had. Until now. I opened it slowly, carefully. Inside was a single note: "This house is more than wood and walls. It's who we are. Don't let them take that away. Love always, M." I held it to my chest for a long time. Then I started packing. Not to leave, but to show up. Michael and Lacey had planned a big backyard barbecue that Saturday. Some kind of family mixer, open invite to friends, neighbors, co-workers. I hadn't been invited. Of course I hadn't. But that didn't matter. This time, I wasn't asking permission. I ironed my best shirt, polished my shoes, packed my briefcase. I included copies of every document, every dated letter, every signature. I printed one more thing, a letter to Molly, folded gently, sealed with wax. When I arrived, people were already mingling. Laughing. Kids running through sprinklers, burgers sizzling on the grill. It was the same yard where Michael had taken his first steps. Where Marjorie had taught him how to dance on her toes under the stars. He was standing near the drinks table, laughing with a coworker. When he saw me, the smile dropped. "Dad," he said. "What are you?" I held up my hand. Calm. Silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, voice louder than I expected. "Sorry to interrupt. I just need a few minutes." The chatter died down slowly. People turned. "I won't take much of your time," I continued. "I'm just here to clarify a few things." Michael stepped forward. "Dad, this isn't the—" "Sit down," I said. And he did. I opened the briefcase. Pulled out the new will. Held it high. "This is the updated version of my estate plan," I said. "As of last month, my home, my savings, and everything I've worked for no longer belong to this man," I pointed to Michael, or his wife. "They will inherit nothing." Gasps. Murmurs. "Instead," I continued, "Marjorie's house will become a shelter for veterans. My savings will fund scholarships. And if anyone contests this, if anyone tries to undo it, everything goes to the state." I paused. This isn't about revenge. It's about legacy. About love that deserved better. Michael stood, face red, eyes darting around. "Dad, you're making a scene." "No, you made this scene," I said. "When you left me at the airport. When you handed me a power of attorney form without a word. When you started treating me like a problem to be solved." He opened his mouth, but I wasn't finished. "I gave you everything," I said, voice shaking now. "But I will not give you my soul." And with that, I handed the sealed letter for Molly to a friend of the family. "If she ever asks where I went," I said, "give her this." Then I turned and walked out, slow, steady, with the sun warm on my shoulders. Justice doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it walks away, with dignity. I expected backlash. Maybe a call. A message. Something. But all I got was silence. Michael didn't reach out. Lacey didn't show up at my door demanding answers. Even Molly didn't call, and I didn't blame her. I figured they were regrouping, deciding what narrative to spin. Or maybe they were just embarrassed. Shame has a way of making people quiet. But I wasn't finished. There was still a part of me that needed to face them, not just legally, not just through paper trails, but in a room, with real eyes and real silence. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted truth. I wanted to say things that had been sitting in my chest for years. So when I got word that Molly's birthday party was being held at their house, just close friends and family, according to the invitation I wasn't supposed to see, I made a decision. I put on my Sunday clothes. I combed back my hair, polished my shoes, and packed a folder with the finalized documents, the will, the property deed, the statement of intent. And I brought one more thing, Marjorie's locket. Inside, a photo of Michael when he was 7, hugging his mother at the beach. The house was full when I arrived. Cars lined the curb. Balloons tied to the mailbox. Laughter spilled out the windows like music at a dance I hadn't been invited to. I walked up the steps and knocked. I heard Lacey's voice before I saw her. She opened the door, her smile vanishing the moment she saw me. "Oh," she said. "We weren't expecting." "No," I said. "You weren't." I walked past her. The room went quiet. Conversations paused. Forks stopped mid-air. Michael stood by the kitchen island, a slice of cake in his hand. Molly sat beside him, wearing a paper crown, giggling with her friends. She looked up, saw me, and her smile froze, half joy, half confusion. "Grandpa?" I gave her a soft nod. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Michael stepped forward. "Dad, this isn't the place." "This is exactly the place," I said. "Because this is where the pretending ends." I took out the documents. Set them gently on the counter. People watched, eyes wide. "This is my will," I said. "It is legally notarized, witnessed, and filed. It removes you, Michael, from any and all inheritance. It transfers ownership of the house to Marjorie's House, a non-profit shelter for veterans." I paused. Looked around the room. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I'm here because lies thrive in silence, and I've been silent long enough. Lacey stepped forward, arms crossed. "You've made your point. Now please leave." I turned to her. "No," I said. "I haven't made my point yet." I looked directly at Michael. "You left me at the airport. You told your daughter I wasn't coming to her play. You laughed about my home, called it outdated, and started making plans to take it while I was still breathing." His lips parted, but no sound came out. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the locket. Held it up between us. "This," I said, "is the boy I raised. This is the child who used to ask me to stay an extra 5 minutes at bedtime. Who cried when he thought he'd lost his teddy bear. Who said, 'I love you, Daddy,' without a second thought." I set the locket down beside the will. I don't know where that boy went. But I know he doesn't live here anymore. The room was silent. People stared. A few looked away. Michael tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm doing this because legacy is earned, not owed. And you've forgotten what family means." I turned to Molly. "I left a letter for you, honey. Someday, when you're ready, read it. Just know that your grandpa always loved you." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I love you too," she whispered. That almost broke me. But I held firm. I turned back to Michael one last time. "I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing it because I won't spend the rest of my life begging for scraps of respect from the very man I gave everything to." And then I walked out. No yelling. No scene. Just the truth, laid bare under the afternoon sun. Brain, do you think the father made the right choice? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. The silence came quick, and it came thick. After that day, no one called. Not Michael. Not Lacey. Not even a "you went too far" text. Nothing. For a while, I kept checking the phone, almost out of habit. I'd glance at it during breakfast, thinking maybe Molly would send a message. Maybe she'd want to talk. But the screen stayed dark. Quiet. And strangely, that silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. The house was quiet now, but not heavy. I swept the porch, trimmed the hedges, pulled weeds from Marjorie's rose garden. I started rising with the sun again, feeding the birds, sitting with my coffee as the sky turned from gray to gold. Some mornings, I'd sit on the back step and talk aloud like I used to when Marjorie was alive. "You were right," I said once, staring at the faded paint of the fence. About him. About not giving too much too soon. I didn't listen. I wanted to believe blood meant something. The wind rustled the leaves above me, soft like breath. On the third day after the confrontation, I went into town. First stop was Joe's corner store. He looked up from the counter and gave a small, knowing smile. "So," he said, "I heard you made quite the speech." I chuckled. Didn't realize I had an audience. He handed me my usual rye bread and eggs. "You did the right thing." "Funny," I said. "Doesn't feel like victory. Just necessary." Outside, people looked at me differently. Not with pity, but with quiet respect. Like they understood something had shifted. Not in my reputation, but in me. The betrayal had hardened something, yes. But it had also cleared the fog. I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation anymore. Back home, I dug through the attic. Pulled out old boxes of Marjorie's sewing kits, family albums, and one wooden crate filled with letters from veterans she'd written during the war. She'd volunteered for years, sending handwritten notes to men overseas. Encouraging words. A little bit of home on paper. That was when the idea began to take shape. Maybe this house, our house, could still do some good. That night, I called Reverend Thompson from the church down the road. We hadn't spoken much since Marjorie passed, but he remembered her well. "I'm thinking of turning the house into something useful," I said. "Not selling it. Giving it to people who need it." He didn't even hesitate. "That sounds like Marjorie through and through." We set up a meeting. He put me in touch with a local nonprofit that helps young veterans transition back into civilian life, guys with nowhere to go, carrying invisible scars and worn-out boots. "I don't want it to feel like a shelter," I told the director on the phone. "I want it to feel like a home." "We can do that," she said. "But are you sure? It's a big sacrifice." "It's not a sacrifice," I said. "It's a purpose." That night, I sat with a notepad and began sketching. What rooms could be cleared? Where we'd add a ramp? How to open the dining room back up, turn the spare room into a library. I hadn't felt this focused in years. Funny thing about grief, it can suffocate you for months, then suddenly turn into fuel if you let it. The next few days, I started small. Cleared the closets. Donated old clothes. Emptied drawers I hadn't touched since the 90s. Every item I let go of made the air feel lighter. People began to notice. Cynthia from the diner dropped by with an apple pie and said, "Heard you're doing some real good with that place." Marv offered to help with repairs. Said he still had strong knees and a decent hammer. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. But it felt right. Then, one afternoon, as I was sweeping the porch, a car pulled up. A little silver sedan. The door opened, and out stepped Molly. She walked slowly, nervously, like she wasn't sure she'd be welcome. "Hi, Grandpa," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Hi, sweetheart." She stood there for a moment, shifting her weight, holding something in her hands. "I found your letter," she said. "Mom didn't want me to read it. But I did anyway." I stepped aside. "You want to come in?" She nodded. Inside, she looked around like it was a museum. Touched the photo of her grandma on the mantel. Ran her fingers across the edge of the old piano. "I remember this house being bigger," she said, smiling faintly. "You were smaller," I replied. We sat in the living room, the silence stretching but not uncomfortable. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what they did. For not speaking up." I reached out, squeezed her hand. "It wasn't your fight, Molly. And I never blamed you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just wanted you to know I love you," I said. She nodded, crying now. "I love you too, Grandpa." It didn't fix everything. But it reminded me that not all is lost. Sometimes, the people worth keeping find their way back, even after the dust settles. I hadn't felt that kind of purpose in years. The kind that wakes you up before the alarm, that makes your bones ache in a good way. That afternoon with Molly sparked something in me, something I thought had died right alongside my trust. When she left, she hugged me tighter than she ever had. Said she'd come by again soon. And I believed her. But that wasn't what changed me. What changed me was what she said right before she walked out the door. "You're doing something important here, Grandpa. I think Grandma would be proud." That hit me like a freight train. Not because of the words, but because they were true. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving. I was building something again. That night, I pulled out the blueprints of the house, old ones, faded and torn at the corners. Marjorie had scribbled notes in the margins years ago: add window for morning light, bookshelf here, big table for Thanksgiving. She always thought of others. I called the nonprofit the next day. Told them I was ready to move forward. They sent a young coordinator named Eli to come walk the property with me. Early 30s, firm handshake, soft eyes. Former Navy. Said he'd spent 2 years sleeping in his car after discharge before he got help. We walked room to room, and I showed him everything. "This was my son's room," I said, pausing at the doorway. "That dent in the wall, he threw a baseball too hard." Marjorie made him apologize with a pie. Eli smiled. "It's got good bones. It's got good memories," I said. "And it needs new ones." We drew up plans. 3 bedrooms could be converted into shared living quarters. The sunroom would make a fine counseling space. The old garage? A workshop for job training. I didn't want to oversee it from the sidelines. I wanted my hands on the work. I wanted to scrub, lift, paint. I wanted to sweat again, not because I had to, but because I chose to. Word got around town. People started showing up. Cynthia from the diner brought a thermos of soup and sat on the porch with a clipboard, organizing volunteers. Marv showed up with his grandson and a box of tools. Even Father Thompson came by with paint samples and offered up the church van to move furniture. One morning, I opened the front door and found 3 kids, local high schoolers, standing there with buckets and rags. "You're the guy turning the house into a shelter, right?" one of them asked. I nodded. "Cool," he said. "Our civics teacher said we could help." By noon, they were scrubbing baseboards and hauling boxes like they'd lived here their whole lives. It wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. But every nail I drove into the wall, every brushstroke on peeling paint, felt like therapy. I was putting myself back together, one corner at a time. The more we worked, the more the house began to shift. Not just physically. There was laughter again. There was noise, good noise. People coming and going, stories being shared, memories being made. I started writing in the evenings, just a few lines at first, then full pages. Letters to Marjorie. Updates. "You should see the kitchen now, sweetheart. Bright yellow like you always wanted. Eli's building the cabinets himself. Says he wants the guys to learn how to cook, real food, he says, not ramen." I printed one of those letters and pinned it above the stove, right beside a photo of her in her garden hat. One afternoon, while sorting through old linens in the hall closet, I found something I'd forgotten existed, a note from Michael, written when he was 10. It was on the back of a homework assignment. It said, "Dad, I want to be just like you when I grow up. Love, Michael." I sat down right there in the hallway and read it over and over. Not with bitterness. Not with anger. Just grief. Because that boy was gone. And the man he became had chosen a different path. But I didn't rip it up. I didn't throw it away. I folded it gently and placed it in the drawer beside Marjorie's recipe cards. Because even broken things deserve a place in the story. By the end of the second week, we had working plumbing, fresh paint, clean rooms, and a front porch strong enough to hold a few rocking chairs. I installed a new mailbox and ordered a brass plaque for the front gate. It would read, "Marjorie's house, a place to come home to." That night, after everyone left, I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, breathing in the scent of lemon cleaner and fresh wood. It wasn't just a shelter anymore. It was a new beginning. Not just for the men who'd sleep under this roof, but for me too. I stood in the living room, hands on my hips, and whispered into the quiet. I think we're finally building something worth passing on. It started with one. A young man named Kevin moved in midweek. 25, Army veteran, soft-spoken, eyes heavy with a kind of exhaustion I remembered all too well. He'd been living in his car for the past 3 months after getting laid off from his warehouse job. No family. No backup plan. Just a duffel bag and a few dollars. When I handed him the keys to his room, he stared at them for a long time before whispering, "No one's ever trusted me with something like this." "You've earned it," I told him. "You're home now." He nodded, eyes glassy. "Thank you, sir." "Call me Walter," I said. He smiled for the first time. Within days, the place started to feel alive. Kevin helped paint the back fence, taught the other guys how to fix leaky faucets, and even planted a few herbs in the garden. Said it helped his nerves. Then came Darnell, Marine, early 40s, built like a bear but gentle as a lamb. He baked bread when he couldn't sleep. Every morning the kitchen smelled like cinnamon and warm butter. He'd hum gospel tunes while kneading dough, and on Sundays he'd sit on the porch and read aloud to anyone who'd listen. Soon enough, we had 6 men living under Marjorie's roof. Each with a past. Each with stories that twisted your heart. And somehow, all of them found a rhythm here. They shared meals. Fixed things. Took turns cleaning. Not because anyone made them, but because the place felt like something worth caring for. One morning, I found Kevin sweeping the porch at dawn. I stepped outside, sipping my coffee. "Don't you ever sleep?" I asked. He grinned. "Don't want to waste the quiet." We sat there for a while, not talking. Just listening to the birds, the wind, the creak of the old rocker beneath me. "You really built something here," he said eventually. "Feels like family." I swallowed a lump in my throat. That's the idea. The thing is, none of these men shared my blood. They didn't owe me anything. But they treated this house with more respect, more gratitude, than my own son ever had. They called me Mr. Hughes at first, but it didn't stick. Before long, it was just Walt or Pops. Kevin started saying it first. "Hey Pops, can I borrow your screwdriver?" Darnell picked it up next. "Pops, you want the last biscuit?" At first I chuckled. Then I realized I didn't mind it at all. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was in the way. I felt wanted. One afternoon, I was fixing a loose board in the hallway when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, I froze. It was Molly. She stood there holding a tray of lemon bars, Marjorie's recipe. I'd know that smell anywhere. "I baked these with Mom," she said. "She doesn't know I brought them." I stepped aside, trying not to look too eager. "Come in, honey." She walked through the house, quiet, eyes wide. The men greeted her kindly, with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "It's different," she said. "But it feels warm." "That's the idea," I said. She handed me the tray. "I know Dad's mad. He says you embarrassed him." "Did I?" She looked at me, honest as ever. "No. I think you embarrassed the part of him that knows he was wrong." I didn't respond. I just touched her shoulder, gently. "Can I stay for dinner?" she asked. I nodded. Of course. That night, we ate on the porch. Fried chicken, green beans, Darnell's bread, and Molly's lemon bars for dessert. She sat next to Kevin and asked questions about the military. Laughed when he told a story about raccoons raiding his backpack. I watched her carefully, how comfortable she looked. How at home. Later, as the sun dipped behind the trees, she turned to me and said, "This feels more like family than my house ever did." I couldn't speak. Just nodded, heart full. The next week, she came back. Brought board games. Helped paint the old shed out back. She started calling every other day, asking if I needed anything. Said she'd come by after school, help with the garden. She never once mentioned Michael. And I didn't ask. One evening, after she left, I found a note on my desk in her handwriting. "Grandpa, I'm sorry for how things turned out. I want you to know I'm proud of you. I'm proud of this. I hope one day I can build something that matters like you have. Love, Molly." I folded the note and placed it in the same drawer as her father's old school paper, the one where he said he wanted to be just like me. Funny how the things we pass down aren't always what we planned. Sometimes the family we create shows up late. But when they do, they stay. And they don't ask for your keys, they offer to fix your door. It had been 2 months since I'd seen or heard from Michael. Not a call. Not a message. Not even a knock on the door. The men at the house kept me busy. Repairs, meetings with the non-profit, late-night chess matches with Kevin, there was always something to do. And Molly, bless her, came by every Sunday with something sweet and a new story from school. But somewhere deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Michael had pride. Not the healthy kind either. The wounded kind. The kind that hardens when challenged. And eventually, that pride came walking up my driveway in a navy blue jacket and polished shoes. I was on the porch, watering the ferns when I heard the crunch of gravel. He looked different, tired, drawn. Like he hadn't been sleeping right. He stopped at the bottom of the steps, unsure whether to come up. "I'm not here to argue," he said. I nodded. "That's good. Because I'm done with that." He looked around, taking in the fresh paint, the repaired shutters, the flower beds the men had replanted just last week. "You've changed a lot. This house deserved it." Silence settled between us. Heavy, but not angry. Michael stepped up, slowly. Stood in front of me like he didn't quite know who I was anymore. "I heard Molly's been coming by." "She has. She's stubborn," he said. "Takes after Mom. She takes after the best parts of both of you." He looked down at his shoes. "Lacey's not happy. Says I should contest the will." I didn't move. "And what do you say?" He hesitated. "I told her it's done. I read the documents. Ironclad." "You came to tell me that?" "No," he said. "I came because I think I lost sight of things." I leaned back slightly, watching him. "I thought I was doing the responsible thing," he continued. "Planning ahead. Making sure you were taken care of." "You mean making sure you were taken care of?" He didn't deny it. "I kept thinking about that house as mine. Like it would just fall into place someday. Like it was owed." "It wasn't," I said. "None of this ever was." He nodded. There was a long pause before he spoke again. "I saw Molly's note. The one she left on your desk. She told me about the shelter. About what you've done here. And what did you think?" "I think you're building something better than I ever could." That stopped me. He sat down on the porch steps, hands clasped together. The silence stretched between us, more peaceful now. Not empty, but reflective. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said after a while. And I'm not here to change your mind. Good, I said. Because the mind's made up. He looked over at me, then out at the yard. I miss Mom, he said quietly. Sometimes I still hear her voice when I'm driving alone. I nodded. Me too. I think, somewhere along the way, I forgot what she would have wanted. What she stood for. She stood for love, I said. For fairness. For building something bigger than herself. He nodded, slowly. I failed you. I didn't respond right away. I let the wind speak for a moment, soft rustling in the trees, birds calling from the fence line. You failed us, I said finally. But that doesn't mean you're beyond grace. His eyes welled, but he didn't let the tears fall. I'm not asking to be part of the will. I know that's over. But I'd like to come back sometime. Maybe help. If there's anything left to help with. I looked at him for a long while. You won't find your name in the deed, I said. But if you're willing to scrub floors, hammer nails, or listen to men who need a place to belong, you can earn your place here. He smiled faintly. That's fair. I reached beside my chair and pulled out a hammer. Set it on the porch between us. You want to help? The shed roof still got a hole. He picked it up without a word. For the next hour, we worked side by side. We didn't talk much. Just the sound of hammering, the rhythm of a second chance being built one board at a time. When we were done, he stood back, wiped his brow, and looked at the sky. I don't know if this fixes anything, he said. It doesn't, I replied. But it's a start. He turned to leave, but paused at the bottom of the steps. Dad? Yeah. Thank you. For still seeing something in me. I didn't answer. Just watched him walk away, shoulders heavier, steps slower, but somehow, straighter. Speech balloon. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved? Share your story in the comments. The day the sign went up, I cried. Not loud, not messy. Just quiet tears, the kind that come from deep places. The kind that don't ask permission. It was early morning, sun barely clearing the treetops, when Eli and Kevin carried the plaque up the walkway. Marjorie's house, a place to come home to, it read, in simple bronze letters. Beneath it, in smaller font, dedicated to love, dignity, and second chances. We gathered everyone on the porch. Volunteers. Veterans. Molly. Even Reverend Thompson came, wearing his best suit and holding a plate of blueberry muffins, Marjorie's favorite. I stood beside the sign, rested a hand on it. She would have liked this, I said softly. She would have loved it, Cynthia replied. We cut a ribbon. Took photos we'd send out with the nonprofit's newsletter. The local paper ran a short story on the project, a retired man turning his home into a sanctuary for veterans. They asked for a quote. I told them, this house isn't mine anymore. It belongs to every soul who walks through its doors and finally hears, welcome home. They printed that. The rooms filled quickly. 6 full-time residents, 2 part-timers, and a list of more waiting. Kevin now serves as a mentor. Darnell teaches baking to neighborhood kids. One of the newer guys, Luis, plays the guitar every Friday evening on the porch. People come to listen, neighbors, students, even a few curious souls from church. There's laughter again. Real, belly-deep laughter. There's arguing too, about chores, TV channels, the right way to season chili, but it's the kind that passes. Like family. One morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. It was from Luis. This house saved my life. I came here thinking I didn't deserve another chance. You gave it to me anyway. Thank you. I folded it gently and placed it in the same drawer where I kept Molly's note. And Michael's old school paper. That drawer was full now, not of wealth, not of deeds, but of worth. About a month after the opening, Michael returned. Not with lawyers. Not with apologies. Just a rake in one hand and a bag of mulch in the other. He didn't say much. Just nodded and got to work on the front garden. Molly worked beside him, showing him how we'd laid things out. They didn't talk like father and daughter. They talked like teammates. Later that afternoon, as I brought them lemonade, Michael said, "She really looks up to you, you know." "I'm glad," I replied. He hesitated. "And I'm still learning." "You've got time," I said. "If you use it well." That was all we needed to say. One evening, I sat on the porch alone, watching the sun dip behind the trees. I could hear the men inside, laughing over a game of cards. I could smell bread in the oven. Hear Molly's voice reading something out loud to Louise in the library. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Marjorie's locket. Opened it. Looked at her face. The same calm smile. The same eyes that saw the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. I kept the promise, I whispered. I protected what we built. And I found people who understand what it's worth. A breeze stirred the trees. I imagined her in that moment, not gone, just nearby. There was no ribbon cutting, no grand unveiling. Just life. Real life. The kind we spent decades building. And now, finally, giving back. I leaned back in the rocker, the wood creaking beneath me, and watched as Kevin helped a new resident carry in his bags. Molly waved from the garden. The porch light flicked on. And I smiled. Because Marjorie's house lived again. Not through bricks. But through every soul it helped rebuild.